dear friend who is listening who wants to kind of weigh in on some of the things that she disagreed with that maybe I didn't bring up. We've got Miss Debbie Pelley is on the program. Debbie, good to talk to you again, ma'am.
Good to talk to you, Paul. And I did try to call in while Laurie was still there because I wanted to I wanted to ask her some questions. But, yes, I have a few things I'd like to say about what was said.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, one thing, I will admit that the people pushing the Common Core are brilliant. You know, they have a very good technique for what they're doing, and the thing that they tell legislators and legislators will say is it's only the standards and not the methods that Common Core is pushing. Mm-hmm. Well, they can say that because they divide things into categories, and one category is the standards, and then they adopt other categories like the evaluation, staff development, and teacher specialist. The teacher specialist, staff development, and the evaluation are basically the things used to force the teachers to teach the process and do everything just like they want them to. And Arkansas has officially adopted an evaluation standard, and I've read the book, and and Lori gave her perspective from what she had learned about it. I taught, and I've studied education for 30 years, so I'm not an uninformed person on it. But in these evaluations, I had a teacher to tell me recently that if she didn't change her methods of teaching, and she's very experienced, a very good teacher, that she would her evaluation would go down probably to 50% by next time. And not only are the teachers being trained in these in how to teach, and they will be their score will depend on how well they teach the methods they teach them, but the principals and even superintendents are even having to be trained. So no longer does the principal evaluate the teacher on the basis of what he thinks is right. He has to evaluate the teacher on the basis of whether they're meeting the standards and the process.
So let me ask you this. What you just described, is that part of Common Core, or is that, that's not a part, what you're describing, is it a part of Common Core? Is it a part of Common Core standards, or is it a part of some other part of Common Core? Go ahead.
Let's put it this way, Paul. Everybody that adopts the common standards adopts it too. Now, basically, Common Core is just a continuation of what they've been doing since '83 when Bill Clinton and Hillary were here. And the staff development, and Lloyd talked about how many teachers she taught with. Well, I'm in touch with teachers all the time and have been for years. And we did a survey back a few years ago where we sent to 4 different schools, 4 different sizes, and got a very good return on them. And 85% of the teachers said that the staff development was ineffective and of little improvement and of little value in improving student achievement. But that's where that for years now they do this. Someone said the other day that gradualism is what has destroyed America. They do this very gradually. This has been going on now for 20 years or more. Mm. And that's in staff development. They keep telling you how to teach and how you're supposed to teach. And in this book, now this is concrete stuff that Arkansas has adopted. In this book, they teach you how what things are going to be important, and that's where you get. For one thing, they encourage cooperative learning. In other words, on one page, this is one of the things that you go to check off. To which part of your curriculum does this lesson relate? Then it mentions group learning, cooperative learning, and other types of groups, and that's a method that they've been pushing now for years. It's emphasizing the collective over the individual. Mm-hmm. And so in this evaluation now, they've made it to where the principals have got to grade them on this, whether they're doing this or not. And then one of the things says that she's to be graded on is this teacher conveys genuine enthusiasm for the content of Common Core. So if she doesn't show enthusiasm for it, she can't even express her own views without being graded down.
So you're saying this is in the evaluation process. So this is, I think, for those of the listeners that don't know, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking to Debbie Pelley. Teachers are evaluated on a yearly basis. Is that correct?
Well, it's changing all the time.
Okay.
It's not. Probably more often than that now.
Now,
I know that the principal has to come into the teacher's room and different things a lot more often than they used to.
Okay. Now, then you mentioned teacher development. So, is teacher development, say, there are some
development.
There are some times when you have. You mean the grading or the evaluation is development? Is that what you said?
That's part of it.
Okay.
That's why I said they do all these in different categories, and then they can come out and say, well, the standards don't say how you have to do it. They're right, the standards don't, but then they have another method of doing it.
Okay.
And the staff development is where they start gradually with teaching you how important individual or group learning is, and how you don't want the desk in rows anymore. You want them in groups, and then one of the things in this book on evaluation says that the teacher is supposed to be able to train the students. This one that'll be graded on. Small group work is well organized, and most students are productively engaged in learning while unsupervised by the teacher. Now, I taught 27 years, and I was never able to get a group of students to stay on task unsupervised.
Yeah.
And you don't even get that in college.
So I guess my question again is, what is the relationship between these evaluations and teacher development with Common Core in terms of, as I agree with you, Debbie, when you read the standards, aside from the fact that Miss Lee did she did admit that, there is some new ways of teaching math that directly, the standards say do this, and it does correlate. I mean, to me, that was an admission of something that I wanted to get, the fact that the standards are going to influence the process of how you teach, because you want them to pass the test. But I guess my question is there a direct correlation between the Common Core standards and the evaluation process? And if not, I would imagine that is there a way to say we're not going to do the evaluation and we're not going to do the development anymore?
There's no way it's mandated. They've adopted it. It's been voted on. They've adopted it in Arkansas. And the thing of it is, Paul, that's why I'm saying they probably tried to fix it where you can't pin it down, so that they can keep saying these things and even convince legislators of the truth of it, because just like Lori has not been in the classroom, Lori has not been to the staff development. She hasn't been pressured when the principal comes in, your lesson plan book has to tell which standard that you're teaching that day.
Yeah, that's a nightmare. I mean, I've heard from teachers that's just it is a night. The paperwork just creates.
Then Lori will probably say that's not Common Core, but it is, because all the money they're putting into education to do this Common Core and everything is what pays for all this staff development and everything. See, that they've added several days of staff development to the teachers. They have to go so many more days than the kids do, and that's to allow for all the staff development.
Okay, so that's
where they teach all these processes and teach the principals until even your younger principals, that's all they know.
Okay, so
they think that you're not a good teacher if you're not abiding by what they've been taught in staff development.
So that's why, when like my wife's a teacher, and there are some days where she has to go to school, and the kids, the kids get out. Okay, so that during these little strategy days, this is the kind of stuff that they're being taught. It makes sense.
It's like brainwashing.
Okay. So this is very interesting. So definitely another side from what we got the first hour. And because I was quite shocked, as I was reading the standards, I was finding myself questioning, well, then why do I have organizations like, why do I have organizations like the Heritage Foundation, Heartland Institute, Cato Institute? Why do I have some of these conservative groups that have come out that are more slanted against Common Core? Why did the Republican National Committee come out with a platform opposed to Common Core? Now, we did talk about placating earlier, so I guess that could be one of the reasons. However, what you're saying at least makes a little bit more sense to me, that there is kind of the left hand and the right hand are separate, but they're working together, and you kind of have that that 1-2 punch. So you've got the Common Core, and then you're coming around here with a left hook with your evaluation standards, and your teacher development, and that's kind of how they're getting it. So you agree with that?
And then they can make it very deceitful. In fact, what you just heard is a very good way of the way they have deceived the legislators. And see, and this evaluation, for instance, under unsatisfactory behavior, you get unsatisfactory behavior if your teacher, if the furniture arrangement hinders the learning activities. And that's when by that they mean if you have them in straight rows in traditional learning, then that you would get unsatisfactory.
Wow.
They don't want any rows of desks. They want groups of chairs, circles, and switches, which cause all kinds of problems in most classrooms.
Go ahead.
And see, I don't know. I know one time I talked to Lori individually about this in Little Rock when I'd gone to a Common Core meeting up there, and she had mentioned that this is not Common Core. Well, it is Common Core because this is where the money is going for. This is where the educational reforms all work together, and that's what it is. And they've changed the name of it several times. You know, it's not really any different except. I would say it's more like No Child Left Behind, No Steroids. You know, they've changed the different types of curriculum where they instead of reading fictional things and stuff, they do it documentation. And another one is Phyllis Schlafly. She's been such a leader of our country for so long, and she points out all these things. And she pointed out that some of the things they're reading are the executive orders.
Wow.
I mean. You know, so and then these two, I know I talked to Lori about it, but she didn't understand, but on the Common Core, and it does say Common Core, reading list, they have got pornographic books on there. I mean, extremely pornographic books. Well, I know I've looked up at least two of them. Now, but it says Common Core reading list. You know, a preferred reading list. I've checked it out and looked it up. And by the way, Lori and I fought over a year together in a battle. That's how I got to know her really well. On the bad books, there was pornographic books in Fayetteville Library. And we didn't win, but we got a lot of information out. And then her story was called Story of the Year by Arkansas Times because it got so much attention.
Wow.
So I do know that Lori has been on the side of conservatism in a lot of ways. But I just feel like that because she's not a teacher, because she's not, you know, she has heard the talking points that your legislators hear.
You know,
and so this was a good exercise in people understanding why the legislators are confused.
Yeah, hearing both sides. And you know, more I've read about Common Core, it's the early educators that are having the early age educators that are having the most problem. You know, your first, second, third grade. We talked a little bit about that, and I just remember thinking to myself, for example, a few years ago, my wife was teaching first grade, and there were just, I would just hear these stories, and I thought to myself, you know, this is not productive. And I wondered aloud many times, you know, the people in charge, or the people that you would think would be in charge of this at the local level, are people from around here. They're part of the community. Why would they be, you know, running a school this way or running a school district this way? And you come to find out, I guess I feel like you've answered a lot of my questions here today, Debbie, because if they have this evaluation process and they have this, you know, this training and things, that's how, because I wonder, you know, why are they going away from individual, and it's not like it's one teacher's idea. It's either, you know, 1 year maybe one person doesn't, and the next year they're all doing it, and it seems like it's mandated. No, we've got to have tables where kids sit in groups, and they can't have their individual desks. And that's just one example. There are others, and I just find myself just sick about it, you know. But this makes sense if you say it's tied, because it's where all the education money is going, and so then they kind of have this wraparound evaluation process that holds people accountable.
In fact, I was down at Little Rock when, and I have heard experts come into Little Rock and give testimony on things that they're so good. They're so good that when they got finished, I thought, you know, if I wasn't a teacher, I'd believe them. You know, because they can. Well, Lori did such a good job. Lori has a special gift in being articulate. But if you've been there and you know all of it, then they can't do that to you because you know what to come back with.
So you might say
you've been an actual teacher.
You
exactly
lived
through it.
Yeah. So you're saying you've been a teacher, for
I taught 27 years.
27 years. So you've been following this for more than 30 years. You know what's going on. So you're saying that a legislator may have a tendency to say, well, this is the law. This is what the standards are. This is what they're going to be. They're just standards. There's no big deal. And then maybe legislators kind of out of sight, out of mind. You don't really know what people are. What happens next? What trickles down next in terms of, like you said, this idea of valuation standards and in training is something really new to me. And I wonder if that's something that we could change. I wonder if you could change that independent of standards. You think that'd be possible?
I don't think it would, because I think it goes together. Because see, what they do is they give all this grant money, and you ask why administrators get involved with it a lot. A lot of times they do it because they get this grant money, and you put it in the paper that they got this big grant for something that makes their school look good. I mean, it's influential. So if they get this grant money along with just these big, I'm trying to think of what his name is, that gives all this money to Common Core and stuff. They're also responsible for giving all these grants for the staff development.
Staff development.
And there for a while, when they first started all of this, they were going frequent. They were They were flying teachers and administrators everywhere. To California and to Washington and to here and to here. And all of it was for the training, the staff development to teach their new way of teaching. In fact, in one of their grants, they say that we will know we have won when our way becomes the acceptable way of doing things. And so, you have to stop and ask how they keep saying it's local when every school is doing the same thing, every state is doing the same thing. And they'll come and make you think like you're the model for this. Make you look like you're really doing something, and you'll get this big grant, for this or that or whatever, and it all works together. It all goes together.
I will say the one thing that I researched just in terms of Common Core that really intrigued me was the concept of traditional Western classical education, and how this is deviating from that and into what is called it's called the constructivism, a philosophy of education, constructivism, a perspective in education that's based on experimental learning through real-life experience to construct and conditionalize knowledge. And I think that was one of the points of contention with me and Laurie when she was on. I think that constructivism is a good thing when you're talking about kids who are older. When you are in higher level thinking and you're going over logic and things like that. But when I was in first grade, I promise you,
weren't ready for that.
I wasn't ready.
Concrete.
I wasn't ready to think like that. In first grade, guess what? I need to learn that THE spells thee.
Exactly.
And I'm not going to ask why. I mean, I need to know how to read. So I need a teacher up there that has authority. I need to respect that authority, and I don't need to say, well, THE spells thee because that's the conclusion that I came to. And that to me, you got to have that in the early education, and they're uprooting that, which is why you hear so many people who are in early education, I think, complaining the loudest.
Yes, and there's something else about early education. I don't even know people, early education teachers here, know this or not, but in the pre-K schools, there's a particular book, and I can't even think of the name of it. It's got a red, it kind of looks like a big workbook, but they're using it in Head Start in schools everywhere, and they've been doing that 15 or 20 years. We found it in Hoxie schools, and we had a big deal over it, but it actually teaches 1 week of Halloween. It teaches satanic rites and things, witches, how to make witches brew, and how to witch chants, and hand movements, and so forth. And they don't even include Christmas. And then they talk about wanting dolls that have the genitals and everything on them. I mean, it's absurd. And this is where they're going with all this. I mean, and as Laurie said, she knows that the leftists do have that design, but she just doesn't see that this is part of it.
Right. She doesn't see that Common Core has anything to do with that. Debbie, I'm gonna research a lot of this. I'm gonna research some of the stuff that Laurie gave me. I'm gonna continue to research the stuff that you gave me. I'm intrigued by where the money goes to force the what you mentioned, the evaluation and the teacher development. I'm intrigued about that because I do think that is the soft power grab here. That's what I want to call this. If what you're saying is correct, it appears that you have the standards, you go read them, they're benign, then you have this soft power grab where you're not real. It's through the back door. Well, then we're going to tell you how to implement these standards. But it's still unclear to me whether or not they are connected. I don't, in a solid way. It seems to me though that you might not be able to have one without the other. So I don't know. I know you think they're totally connected, correct?
They are totally connected. There's no doubt about it, because from the time that all of this started, it was in fact one time I read where Hillary said it's after I started before this. I started in the 70s teaching, and it was 83 when Bill and Hillary started, and then by 87 they had done already a lot of things in Arkansas, and they were nationally in the national group heading up these educational changes. But I was sitting in the lounge, and I read this article in the Arkansas Times, and it said, Hillary said, we're just getting to the starting gate. And I sat there, and I thought, what in the world does she mean? Haven't they already done enough to the starting gate? And then they talked about the education was supposed to be waves of movements.
Well, there's certainly...
They become in waves.
Yeah, well, they certainly
And I've watched every wave. I know every detail. I sat in at the Capitol. This has been 6 years ago, I guess, and heard them talk about the evaluation and learned. And it's in writing where if you know what you're looking at, you can see it. That the evaluation was not going to be on how good a teacher you were. It was going to be how well you taught the process that they wanted you to teach.
Well, then that's...
That was what, and now they're to it. Now they've adopted it.
Debbie Pelley, we are out of time. Thanks so much for calling in and giving us the other side of the story. Do appreciate it, ma'am, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thank you, Paul.
All right, folks, we got to go to break. Back in a minute.